everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, it just doesn't stop. Things just get more and more interesting as time goes by. And I feel like it gets more and more clear, more explicit, harder to ignore. So we're going to be talking about a couple different things today. There's going to be an eclipse. Well, I'm going to post this tomorrow, so for you it's today. There's going to be a total lunar eclipse, and it's also election day. We're going to look at some of the details here. So we're going to be talking about the eclipse and other eclipses. I found out something interesting that President Woodruff said about an eclipse that he experienced that I think may be a pattern for us. And we're also going to be looking at the numbers 17 and 18 because they seem to play into this. It's oh my gosh. Hopefully I have this organized the right way. This was kind of like a lot to put together. Okay, so I've already done a bunch of videos about eclipses. Okay, all sorts of different eclipses. The most recent of which was this partial lunar eclipse that took place directly over Russia. Here's the video right here. I'll put it in the description below. We've talked about the two main eclipses that everybody knows about in the Second Coming community, both inside the church and outside the church. The two solar eclipses that cross over the continental United States. And they make a cross over the American heartland in southern Illinois. I've looked at these two eclipses in great detail, and they should be of special significance to the church. The reason why is because between those two eclipses, they go over pretty much all the significant church sites in the early church before the saints made it to Utah. So when you look at this map in the back of your scriptures, all these red dots right here, not so much up here. I can't remember if Winter Quarters was included, but anyway, these ones down here in Missouri, all these red dots, from Fort Leavenworth, Kansas to Independence up to Adirondack, all of these were in the path of totality of the 2017 eclipse. Okay, if the eclipse had gone any further north or any further south, Independence wouldn't have been included, or Adirondack would not have been included. We have the other one that's coming up in 2024. Okay, and it happens to go over all these red dots. I don't think it gets this little corner right here, but these ones, kind of like the more important ones, I would argue. Palmyra, where God the Father and Jesus Christ appeared to Joseph Smith. Kirtland, Ohio, where Christ again appeared to Joseph Smith in the Kirtland Temple. Okay, these are going to be in the path of totality of the 2024 eclipse. So that's why I cannot ignore these eclipses. I feel like statistically, it's just so improbable that it would work out this way, and that they're so close together. They're roughly 7 years apart. So I feel like that by itself is a huge sign. That's hard to ignore, but yet there's still people that choose to ignore it, don't want to look into it, and that's fine. Whatever. They can be surprised when it happens. So, okay, so I've gone over eclipses. There was a path of a really large, or really not so much a large, but a really long path of a tornado when we had this. I think it was just last year. Yeah, it was, because that's when I started my channel. So in 2021, December, there was a big December tornado outbreak, and one of them almost broke a record. In the path of that tornado, perfectly, and I right here, watch this video. X marks the spot, but what underlines the spot? The path of that tornado underlines the spot, like perfectly. Like both on this side and this side, the distance is equal, roughly, and it's directly underneath where the X is. So just go watch that video. It's only 7 minutes long. And you can also just, guys, if you want to like watch one of my videos, if you're interested in a particular topic, either go to my playlists or go over here to the search field and type in whatever you want, and it'll come up. So just do Eclipse. You can watch all my Eclipse videos. There's a lot to talk about with those eclipses. Okay, so this is why I have an interest in eclipses that are happening right now, both solar and lunar. And this is what we have going on. So today, the day that I'm recording this, is the 7th. I highlighted the 7 here because there's going to be lots of 7s and 8s and 17s and 18s. So just keep track of that as we go. Okay, total lunar eclipse is happening Tuesday, and it won't happen again for 3 years. That's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. It says here the lunar disk enters totality at 5:17 a.m. Eastern Time. And regardless of what time zone you're in, it's during the 17th minute of whatever time zone you're in. And it'll last for about an hour and a half. Okay. So that's already kind of interesting, you know. It's happening on the day of the elections. These are the midterm elections, and I'm going to look at some of the details behind that. Um, but what's really striking, if as if that's not, you know, crazy enough, it turns out that midterms to coincide with lunar eclipse for the first time in U.S. history. So this has never happened before. Not only is it happening on a very important date, and this isn't just for the United States. I mean, for all my international viewers and listeners, you know that the United States affects the rest of the world. So what happens here very well could affect you, could affect the world. So the first time that a lunar eclipse is happening during a midterms, and I didn't look into it further. I don't know if like it's ever happened on any election day in the U.S., but there you have it. Okay, so let me just make sure I'm not missing anything. I have to do these highlights to remind myself where everything's at, and so I don't miss anything. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so the midterms. Okay, the 2022 elections. The 2022 United States elections are an ongoing set of elections that are primarily, with the exception of absentee balloting, held on November 8th. Now, let's stop here. Let's talk about 7 and 8. 7, all throughout Christendom, Judaism, um, also in our church, you can find this in our church's literature. 7 is viewed as a number of perfection and completeness. Why? Well, because of the Genesis narrative of the 6 creative periods of creating the earth, and then the 7th day of rest. So completion. On the 7th day, God rested from his labors. So the number 8, okay, that's the beginning of a new cycle. We know that our weeks are based on it's based on 7 days, right? Just like out of Genesis, 7 days. 7 days makes a week. And so on the 8th day, it's a new week. It's a new beginning. And I don't know that I've found this. I'm sure you could probably find it somewhere in a church publication or a talk, but I'm pretty sure that's why 8 is the age of accountability, because you come to this earth, okay, you're a baby, and you're growing up, you're with your parents, and you have this period of time, this like kind of orientation to this world, right? And then 8 is the new beginning. It's like the beginning of your age of accountability from then until the rest of your life. So I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why, if there aren't more. Okay, so going from 7 to 8, or even I think, I don't know, I'm not like a numerology expert, but going from, you know, 17 to 18 or 27 to 28, I think that there could still be that same symbolism in those numbers. I could be wrong, but I don't know. Now, this is important, I think, as we kind of like think about the millennium, because we're going from these 6,000 years of being in a terrestrial condition, right? And just forget the number six. So, this long time, and we're going from a transition, we're going from this phase of the Earth's existence into a new phase. Okay, a new beginning, the millennium, and then after that, we're gonna do it again, and the celestial and final phase of the Earth is going to take place. So I just think it's interesting. I'm going to show you more to it. If you've been watching this channel for a long time, you already know all about the 17s and 18s, but I'm going to do a little bit of a rehash here. So just think of it that way when we think about 7 and 8, 17 and 18, going from a previous cycle to a new beginning and a new cycle. Going from the old world, going into the millennium. So, anyway, these elections are being held on November 8th. Okay. Interestingly, well, I'll point that out in a second. Okay. During the midterm election year, all 435 seats in the House of Representatives and 35 of the 100 seats in the Senate will be contested. I'm sure most of my international viewers probably understand this concept, but you know, most countries are the same, where you have um, the executive head, a prime minister, a president, in our case, a president, and then you have parliament, or in our case, we call it Congress, and it's divided into two bodies. The higher one is the Senate with 100 senators. The lower one is the House of Representatives with 435. So they represent the legislative legislative branch of the government. Okay, so that's what's going on here. The Congress, the makeup of the Congress is going to be changing. Okay, as of tomorrow, with the results from tomorrow. 39 state and territorial gubernatorial elections, as well as numerous other state and local elections, will be contested. So gubernatorial, that's like the governors of each, the states. Each state has a governor. The results will determine the 118th United States Congress. The results will determine the 118th United States Congress. When's that going to happen? Oh, it's going to happen on 11/8 of 22. That's weird. 118th, 11/8. Of course, other countries do the day a different way. They do the day first and month second, which makes more sense to me. But here in the United States, this is a common way of doing the date. So 11/8, 118. I don't know. I don't know if it's a foreshadowing or an actual thing going from moving into the new era. I'm not saying that the millennium is happening tomorrow, but this might coincide roughly uh, with the millennium. Just putting in the mind that we're going into a completely new phase. And these elections in particular seem to be really important. And that's not the purpose of this video. I'm not going to go into all the different things that are at stake. I feel like there's many different levels to it. There's the surface level where you just read the news. And there's a lot of stuff going around. Excuse me. There's a lot of stuff right now being said, like our democracy is at stake. And right, like Joe Biden, haven't they said our democracy is at stake? Like stuff like that. So the Guardian, the results of the midterms may determine if American democracy endures. What's at stake in these elections? voters fret about democracy before high stakes election. So I'm not going to go into all that. You probably already know. Um, Biden, in our bones, we know democracy is at risk. So this is the surface level. You can just look it up in Google and see what each side has to say about this and why one side feels that democracy is at stake. Um, there's also the secret combination slash Gadian robber side of it. And that one's a little bit more murky and kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on. But ironically, it's probably the closest to the truth that you can get as to how this world actually works. And you'll remember that before this president, there was an interesting um, uh, movement, stuff going on on the internet that had to do with uh, a symbol that looks like a circle with a stick leaning up against it. I followed that. I didn't really know what to think about it. I liked the way it was being represented. I couldn't tell if this was just one secret combination faction fighting against another. Because when it comes to power, when it comes to big players, I'm not sure that anybody's good, frankly. Even as good as they represented themselves. In the fact of the matter is, I don't know. I don't know about the circle and the stick. Um, it seems like it's still going. I had a subscriber send me a video for another platform, Rumble, where there's some pretty interesting things being said there in regards to this election. But uh, the circle and the stick kind of like has always made it seem like things are just around the corner. So I don't know if this is just like the latest thing, but I don't know. The video I was watching kind of was kind of convincing that no, really, like this one right here, what's going on right now, might be a really big deal. And all I can really say is, the other things associated with it, the numbers and the eclipse certainly are very interesting. I can say that. So only time will tell. We'll just have to wait and see what actually happens. Okay. But the 118th United States Congress on 11/8. That's when it's going to be decided. Okay, moving on. Now, let's talk about the church. Okay, the church, right? The church. October temple milestones. Oh, by the way, this was sent to me by Mindy. I'm going to be talking to her again soon, probably within the next week or two. I've I've done videos with her a couple times now. She made me aware of this. I missed it. I missed it somehow. This is the church news. Okay, church news. October temple milestones. Why the numbers 300, 118, 18, and even 1 matter. The church now has 300 temples dedicated, under construction, or announced. President Nelson has announced 118 of them. 118. That's that. Okay. Sure. Okay. Sure. Um, I looked into the number 300. This hasn't really come up before. I don't know for sure if there's anything to this number, but there probably is. Let me just show you a couple things about 300. I did a search in the Scripture Citation Index, and in October 1984 General Conference, Neal A. Maxwell, who has been coming up quite a bit lately, he said this. As if comparative obscurity, smallness as to scale, and ample human imperfection in the membership of his church were not enough, the Lord wants a humble as well as a pure people. This is very much like what President Nelson just said when he said, let's see, I think it's here, overcome the world and find rest. This was his main talk of this general conference. He said, one crucial element of this gathering is preparing a people who are able, ready, and worthy which you could just substitute that with pure, to receive the Lord when he comes again, the second coming. A people who have already chosen Jesus Christ over this fallen world, a people who rejoice in their agency to live the higher, holier laws of Jesus Christ. I call upon you, my dear brothers and sisters, to become this righteous people. This has never been said before. And I can tell you that with a fair amount of certainty, because I've been doing this for more than a year now. I've been using this powerful tool called the Scripture Citation Index. And on top of that, I have all 12,000 of you. Many of you have sent me just so much amazing information that I've been able to share with everybody. And there's not been a prophet that I'm aware of that has called on the church, specifically the church of their day, to be the people of the second coming. And I've never seen another prophet say things like time is running out, just flat out saying time is running out. I've already covered this many times over. I'll go over some more of it in just a little bit. But okay, so back to Neal Maxwell. The Lord wants a humble as well as a pure people. Thus, the lesson taught ancient Israel is still relevant. Only 300 warriors were used by Gideon to triumph over Israel's enemies. Quote, lest Israel vaunt themselves. Okay, so this is interesting. This is interesting when you think about if, and certainly there is, a Gadiat and robber secret combination element to the elections, and the church is small, and I think that this could be potentially a symbol for our own time. 300 that triumph over the enemies of the world, essentially. We know that Christ at some point, he's going to assume the kingship of the world. I don't know what that exactly looks like. It's probably through just complete destruction of maybe during the fire that cleanses the earth. I don't know. I would think that maybe there would be kind of a transition to make things be a little bit easier, but I don't know. That's something I'm still trying to kind of like sort out in my mind and through my studies. Um, it'd be interesting if the Lord actually has a plan to to like somewhat smoothly transition into the millennium as far as leadership goes, rather than just like taking it all in one day. Although that could be how it happens. I'll have to look into that more. But whatever the case, in this case, 300 to overcome Israel's enemies. And think about what Sister Nelson said in the Alberta, British Columbia area devotional. She said that they knew that this particular General Conference, October 2022, was going to be a singular event. That means out of all the other General Conferences that are roughly the same, there's always opposition, there's always attacks on the church. They knew that this one was going to stand out, singular, because of the intensity of attacks. And she told us that she can't tell us everything. We're going to have to look her up after this life. She said, look me up after this life and I'll tell you more, a lot more. So the church really seems to me that it's under siege more than any other time, as far as like parties, entities, wanting to stop General Conference, wanting to stop the church from progressing. I don't know. We'll find out more probably in the millennium about what was going on this entire time since the beginning of the restoration until now. But she made it seem like it's like at an all-time high. Okay, so 300 to only 300 to triumph over Israel's enemies. There was one more. Whenever I zoom in, it has to move it all around, and then I have to try and find it again. It's a really fun game. This is kind of the same thing. This is by Spencer W. Kimball, 1961 October General Conference. Concerning Jerusalem, the Lord said, I will defend this city. When the powerful, invincible Assyrian army camped at the gates. The night the Lord saved Jerusalem from Sennacherib and his 185,000 troops, who did not live the night through to attack. 300 soldiers and God and Gideon routed the powerful army of the Midianites. The 13 colonies gained a permanent victory over superior forces, and America was born. The Lord and David slew Goliath, and Israel won many battles when they were righteous. God will fight our battles if we honor him and serve him with all of our hearts, might, mind, and strength. So he showed all these different times, that the Lord's forces were small, across different scenarios, including the 13 colonies of the United States, the first colonies, and how the Lord is not restrained by worldly forces. And so that's something to think about, and hopefully that comforts you if you feel that the world is getting so bad, and it is, and so strong and so powerful, and it is, but they cannot defeat the church. They can't. They can't defeat the Lord and his purposes and his church, and especially if you're righteous, if you're living righteously. Okay, I wasn't able to really find anything else that had to do with 300. Okay, but let's continue. There's more. Okay. In April 2022, when President Russell M. Nelson announced 17 new temples, it made for an even 100. Now, we talked about this. This was huge because I talked about how both the numbers 7 and 10 in Jewish traditions, they're viewed as complete and perfect numbers. 7 in the sense of creation, 10 in the sense of math. And if you go into Kabbalah, and I'm not saying that you should, it's not our doctrine, but it's a school of Jewish thought, sometimes called Jewish mysticism. 10 is a very, very important number. So, but anyway, 7 and 10, okay, they both in their own individual ways are perfection and completion. And so you add those two together because in expressing yourself using these symbols, you add things together to make it bigger or stronger, to like really emphasize your point, or you times it together. So in the case where you times 10 and 7, you get 70, right? And 70 is for the 70 nations. 70 is the quorum of the 70, which is for the 70 nations. But 17 as well, okay, but in a different way. Not for the 70 nations, but I think that there is something to that number. So we talked about President Nelson, how he's the 17th president of the church, and wondering, if the Lord is really sticking to this symbolism, is he the last one? Is he the last of the series of prophets before the second coming to like finish up this phase of this dispensation? I don't know. We'll have to see. He's still alive. So he's the 17th prophet of the church. He announced in April 17 new temples to make an even 100. Oh, and by the way, at that point, excuse me, I think it was that conference when he announced that he at that point had announced more temples than Gordon B. Hinckley, because before that point, Gordon B. Hinckley had announced more. He announced, no, maybe it was the conference before, because I think President Hinckley had announced 93, and then President Nelson announced 7, I think, and then after that, no, that wouldn't be right. I don't know. I can't remember. Maybe it was 83. Maybe President Hinckley was 83. Yeah. And then President Nelson, by announcing 17, it was more. Anyway, okay, so 17th prophet, 17 new temples during that conference for an even 100. Um, you look at this talk, The Power of Spiritual Momentum. 17 years before this talk, he gave another talk called Now, I'll put it right here. Now is the time to prepare. Okay, April 2005. Now is the time to prepare. 2022. Oh wait, no. Sorry, there's a reason why I had that there. Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself, but I'll just say it now. Okay, so his last talk of the April 2022 General Conference is Now is the time. 17 years earlier, now is the time to prepare. Now is the time to prepare, but the more recent talk is now is the time. It's no longer now is the time to prepare, just now is the time. And in these two talks, he shares the same poem. This is a poem by Henry Van Dyke, The Sundial at Wells College. Okay, this right here. And it emphasizes the fact that you can't change the past. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. All you have is power over the moment. So now is the time. And the same poem was shared 17 years ago in 2005. So 17. Okay. Now, going back to this talk, this is during the same general conference. He gave the talk, The Power of Spiritual Momentum. Interestingly, when I came to this page this time, it shows 17 minutes and 5 seconds. But you'll recall, and I've captured this at least a couple different times in previous videos, this talk, and I actually have a screen capture from Tyler Cragen because he sent me an email. Tyler Cragen, just so you know, I'll put the link for his channel below. He is somebody that I interviewed once. He has his own channel, and I'll probably be talking to him again soon. His channel is called The Greatest Cause, right here. So this guy, I didn't know this until he sent this to me. He sent me this screenshot where at a prior time, I don't know when it changed, but at a prior time, it was on the church website, 17 minutes and 17 seconds. That's a lot of 17s for one general conference. I must say. 17th prophet, 17 minutes and 17 seconds. Two talks, 17 years apart. 17 temples announced to complete 100 temples. That's like 4 different instances of 17 showing up in a really interesting way. Okay. Of course, there's going to be people that just ignore that, and that's fine. That's okay. That's okay. No problem. This is the talk where, by the way, this is the talk where he introduces the concept of halftime, that he was watching a basketball game. They got to halftime, and he was talking to us how we ourselves need spiritual momentum to finish the game. During this same year, in 2022, at FSY, he said, we're in the bottom of the 9th inning. It was at FSY. I have a video about it. I have the audio clip in the video. So just look up 9th inning. Okay, 9th inning, and you'll find that video. But he said that we're in the bottom of the 9th, which is way further along in a game than at halftime. It's like the end of the game. The last team is up to bat. Which is really interesting because it was during this conference, April 2022, that there was the big push, the big call up for missionaries. I think that they are the last ones to go to bat. I think that's essentially what they're thinking, the general authorities. Okay. Now, so this talk, 17 minutes, 17 seconds. Moving forward, we had this talk. October. So the next general conference, the most recent one, October 2022, at the time of this recording, President Nelson's main talk, because you know that he usually does like opening remarks, closing remarks, maybe one other talk, but then he has kind of like the main talk. This was Sunday morning session, the last talk. And guess how long it was? Guess how long this talk was? His main talk of October 2022 was 18 minutes and 31 seconds. 18 minutes and 31 seconds. You know what's interesting about that? Okay, not only the fact that it's the number 18, okay, but 1831. Do you know what's significant about that year? Do you know what's significant about 1831? Well, 1830, that's the year that the church was organized, right? But 1831, something pretty incredible happened. And I have it pulled up right here. This is on the church website, history topics, Zion/New Jerusalem, early efforts to build Zion. In 1831, Joseph Smith received revelation that the site for the city of Zion would be near the town of Independence in Jackson County, Missouri. Bishop Edward Partridge began to purchase lands in the area and help settle new members as they arrived. So the physical location of Zion in that year was identified. Okay. For the first time since, I suppose, the flood. Before that time, I'm assuming that they knew that I'm not clear on what prophecy they had back then in relation to the New Jerusalem. I'm sure Enoch and his city did. I'd have to go back and like read Moses and other things because I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's safe to say that probably from the flood all the way until 1831, no one knew exactly where it was going to be. Well, maybe Book of Mormon peoples knew. I don't know. That's always possible. Just forget it. Okay. It was revealed in 1831 to us, to this dispensation, where New Jerusalem was going to be centered. We know that one definition for New Jerusalem is North and South America, and that Zion, North and South America, it'll eventually fill the world. But as far as the center place where like the headquarter temple and temples, the 24 temple complex is going to be where it's centered, is in Independence, Missouri. It was revealed 1831. President Nelson's main talk of the last conference was not only 18 minutes, but 31 seconds, and you have 1831. And what happens in this talk? In the year 1831, that's when the land is identified. But as we know, the saints at that time were not worthy to build New Jerusalem. But what does President Nelson say in this very talk? Well, let's read it again. One crucial element of this gathering is preparing a people who are able, ready, and worthy to receive the Lord when he comes again. A people who have already chosen Jesus Christ over this fallen world. A people who rejoice in their agency to live the higher, holier laws of Jesus Christ. I call upon you, my dear brothers and sisters, to become this righteous people. So, if he's calling on us to be the people of the second coming, that must mean that a portion of us, the ones that are actually literally going to be in the center place, the center stake of New Jerusalem, he's identified them. So the land was identified in 1831, and it would seem that publicly we have been identified in this general conference. And it's interesting because Sister Nelson in the Alberta, British Columbia conference, she put this up on the screen. There were like three things that I remember she put up on the screen. She put up this. She put up a quote from their friends where they were like, "Wow, President Nelson, that general conference was the best. We feel like you just called on us to get on the ark." She put that up on the screen. You know what that means? It means that she's highlighting it as though, like putting it in front of our faces and being like, hey, now's the time that we're boarding the ark. And I've had a few people um, say, like, well, she's not a prophet, she's not a seer and a revelator. Okay, I hear you. Do you think that she was just like going rogue in front of President Nelson? President Nelson was right there. Do you think that he's just like sitting there like, oh dear, you're not supposed to say that. Like that's not what I would have said. Or I would say, okay, if that's how you think, what you think is, that's not how it goes, you guys. If you really think that, she does not just go up and say. She doesn't just say whatever she wants to. President Nelson knows what she's going to say. Okay, and he would approve. Otherwise, he'd be like, dear, please don't say that. Okay, so she put up on the screen this President Nelson calling us to be the people of the second coming. She put up the quote from their friends saying, hey, it feels like he just called on us to get on the ark. And then the other one that she put up was powerful. Wait, uh, between now. Okay, here it is. This is the other one that she put up. But my dear brothers and sisters, so many wonderful things are ahead. In coming days, we will see the greatest manifestations of the Savior's power that the world has ever, in italics, seen between now and the time he returns, with power and great glory. Footnote 1, talking about the sign of the Son of Man. He will bestow countless privileges, blessings, and miracles upon the faithful. By the way, I had a subscriber write in, and I actually talked to her on the phone, just because it went easier that way. And she came up with the idea, like she was like, you should do like a call out for people that maybe feel like they've had some of these privileges, blessings, miracles, and share that. And I was like, you know what? That's a good idea. Now, I'm not asking for your like really personal spiritual experiences, like like if you've seen an angel or if you've been translated or something like that. Please keep that to yourself. That's probably not proper to share. But if you have things that are okay to share, feel free to send them in to me. In her case, it was interesting because her mom had passed away, and they brought the body back all the way across the country, from one coast to the other, and they buried it. And there were some people that weren't able to uh, attend, essentially, the funeral. So they decided to kind of have like a later, celebration of life or funeral type thing where everyone could get together, the family. And at first, it seemed like it was really like not going to happen for certain people. It was just too expensive. Um, but through an unlikely sequence of events, everybody was able to come, and she just had a very spiritual moment. The members of her family that were not members of the church seemed to have been maybe softened a little bit. There was some genealogy that was exchanged, which really added to it. And she had the feeling that this gathering of family, which was unlikely, was one of these things, one of these privileges, blessings, and or miracles. Because uh, what's going to come out of that, we don't know yet. Hopefully, she'll let me know later. But I'm sure that the Lord brought them together at this particular time as we're approaching the second coming, because maybe that needed to happen for whatever reason. And so I feel like I've had my own. I'm not going to share anything right now, but I don't know if it's just because I went to the temple for the first time in a while, or if it's because of this, or maybe both. But I feel like I've had a few. So feel free to send that in to me, but use good judgment and don't share anything that's not appropriate, please. Okay, so anyway, that's interesting. Okay, his talk, 18 minutes, 31 seconds. Just, I don't know. You may just pass it off as coincidence. I don't. I really don't. When it comes to a prophet, I do not. I do not at all. especially in this time that we're living. Okay. Okay. That's going to be it for that. Um, so you can see this like very interesting thing going on with 7 and 8 and 17 and 18. And it's matching up between these last two conferences that we've had in 2022. And it seems to be playing out not just with that, but with the elections and the course that this country is going and that the world is going. Let's look at a few more things. Okay, so if you go to time and date, they have a list of all the different eclipses that are going to occur. You can sort it by decade. So in this case, we're looking at the 20s, and they're common. There's different types of eclipses. There's lunar eclipses. There's solar eclipses, and sometimes they're partial. Sometimes they're total. Okay, so um, the one that we're looking at is this one. It's the last eclipse of this year. Um, of either, well, this year there's been two solar and two lunar. The solars were just partial. Excuse me. Excuse me. The solar eclipse, the last one that happened on October 25th, that's the one that was right over Russia, right here. You see that? Just like if Russia had a heartland, population wise, because there's not a whole lot of people out here, um, out east. I'm guessing, like from my understanding of geography, most of them are over here in the area closer to Europe and part of Europe. Uh, the main area is right over that heartland. It's not over Moscow. Moscow's like right here. It's close, but this came at a very critical time as Russia's kind of at a very pivotal moment of the war. I'm not going to go into all the details, but this came at a very pivotal moment. Not even a month after they annexed those four regions of Ukraine that they're trying to keep. Okay, so that's interesting. And I already did a video about this, showing you that there's not really another time recently or in the near future that there's going to be something like this over Russia. So I think it's significant. Um, okay, now this is the one that's going to be happening over today for you guys. And what's interesting to me, like you zoom out, okay, it's mostly going to be like the center of it is like almost squarely over the Pacific Ocean as far as where you can see it the best. But for this dark area, it includes the entire state of Utah. Don't know if that's significant, but I'll tell you what, there's been a lot of signs in the heavens above Utah recently. We talked about the meteor that affected the northern half of Utah, like, well, not really the northern half, but all the way down to like Provo, where all the way from Provo to southern Idaho, this whole area right here heard the meteor explode. This is on August 13th. Just before conference, essentially, just weeks before conference. And then later, I can't remember the date of this one, but just look up meteor on my channel, or just it's a more recent video. There was a meteor that affected this area, not just Utah, but like pretty much this area of people that didn't see or hear the first one. There was another one down here, and it affected an area all the way down to San Diego. So it encompassed southern parts of Southern California, Vegas, northern Arizona. Okay. So Utah as a state is having a lot of heavenly signs right now. And I would take that seriously. I would take that seriously. Why? Well, the prophet and the apostles are there, for one. Okay, the next lunar eclipse, like total lunar eclipse, isn't going to be until 2025. Okay. So in 2025, there's going to be a total lunar eclipse, and it's going to squarely cover the entire, well, the lower 48 states. As you can see, it's going to get part of Alaska. It's going to kind of get Hawaii. Um, well, I guess you could say even Guam a little bit over here, but the darkest area covers the entirety of the lower 48. So that's something to think about. This is the year that the Salt Lake Temple is supposed to be finished. The renovations of the Salt Lake Temple and Temple Square. So that's something to think about. Let's see, Russia. Um, Next year, about a year from now, October 14th, there's going to be an annular solar eclipse. And if I remember right, an annular, it's like a total solar eclipse, but because of the position of the moon, it doesn't like completely block out the sun like a total solar eclipse would. So it's not a partial eclipse because it's not going just over a portion of the sun. It's going right through the center, but it's not going to block out the entire disk. That's my understanding. So this is happening next year, and guess what? It's going over Utah. It's going over Utah. It's going over the Four Corners area. That's interesting, but it's going over Utah. It's not going to go over Salt Lake City or St. George or really any notable uh, town. Not even Moab. Moab's over here. Um, Sorry to all the people, in Parowan, Beaver, Junction, Loa. Beaver is a great place for squeaky cheese, by the way. If you're going down I-15, stop in Beaver, get some squeaky cheese. Or cheese curds, okay, if you don't know what I'm talking about. So this is happening next year, okay? Now, this is where this video is going to get maybe even more interesting. I guess it depends on how you take it. So when I was researching for this video, I first I did my where is it? My phrase tracker for Eclipse. If you don't know what the phrase tracker is, this is for the new people. I've gone through for all these different phrases and words that seem to be associated with the second coming. You can use the scripture citation index provided by BYU, and you can search general conference talks. And I've taken a tally of all the talks that include these words or phrases and put them in chronological order. So, for example, for Eclipse, you see the years right here in column B. The word eclipse appeared in 2 different talks in 2017 and in 1 talk in 2016. You have to go all the way back to 2004 to see another time of that word being used. I did not sort this by context, so they could be using the word in a symbolic or a metaphorical kind of way in their talk. They may not actually be referring to an eclipse. Then you have to go all the way down to to 1973, and then 69 and 68, and then all the way back to the 50s, and that's it. So it doesn't come up very often. I can tell you, though, that these 2 talks in 2017 were referencing the 2017 Great American Eclipse. And that's just another reason to believe that those eclipses that eclipse was important. Okay, along with the one that's coming up in 2024. Now, this right here, this is interesting. Look at this. This is the Journal of Discourses. I continued with my research, and I do searches for things, and I came across this. This says Eventful Times. That's the title of it. Remarks by Elder Wilford Woodruff, delivered in the Tabernacle, Salt Lake City, January 1st, 1871. Okay. Check this out. Check this out. I wish you all a happy new year, and I hope that we may live to see a good many, and that we may keep the commandments of God, obey his laws, and have his approbation and blessing upon us as a people. We have assembled here on this, the first day of the week and the first day of the year, 1871. And this leads my attention to reflect upon the age and generation in which we live, and the great events of the latter days. Events which involve the interests and destiny of all the inhabitants of the earth, both Zion and Babylon, Jew and Gentile, Jerusalem and America, Jerusalem, America, and the whole world. All nations are interested in the events which are approaching us and which await this generation, for whether the world believe it or not, they are of vast interest to them all. There have been certain times looked forward to in the world's history in which was believed that something remarkable would occur. And there have been several of these periods during the last 50 years. I do not know that anything was predicted at an early day with regard to 1830, okay, the year of the first, or the year that the church was established. I do not know that anything was predicted at an early day with regard to 1830, but I recollect when a boy at school of reading a certain verse about a great eclipse of the sun. Okay, interesting. He's associating an eclipse with the establishment of the church. Check this out. In 1831, the next year, will be a great eclipse upon the sun. And by the way, this was given in 1871, so he's telling this from the point of view of before 1831. I heard about this 15 years before it took place, it having been foretold by the astronomers, by the principles and laws of the science of astronomy. On that day, I was passing through a forest of pine wood at Farmington, Connecticut, going to see my father, whom I had not seen for some time. It was nearly as dark as night, and when I got through in the open fields, was there was what is termed a poorhouse, the only house erected within several miles in that region of the country. A poor man died there, and they were drawing his body on an ox sled and were going to bury him. I noticed this as I passed along and thought of what I had read, but nothing of any particular interest occurred that year except the eclipse of the sun. So that was in 1831. But in 1830, something occurred of great interest to all the inhabitants of the earth. That was the establishment of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So this is interesting because when we think of eclipses, right? When we think of signs, now I know that there's been like different things said about this on other places. Signs can be viewed as something that points to the future. In this case, this is something that actually seems to have pointed back 1 year to the past. And the interesting thing about it is that, okay, a solar eclipse is something that blocks out the sun. So, in a spiritual sense, that's kind of not a good thing if you're thinking about light being blocked out. So maybe it would not be appropriate for the sun to be blocked out the year that the church is restored. So it happened the year after. You see what I mean? Like there's symbolism there. Let me read a little bit out of, if I can find them. Okay. This is what at the time, President Uchtdorf in the first presidency, this is what he said. Okay, this is 2017, October 2017. A metaphor of spiritual darkness. However, God will not force us to embrace his light. If we become comfortable with darkness, it is unlikely our hearts will change. For change to take place, we need to actively let the light in. During my flights as an airline captain across our planet Earth, I was always fascinated by the beauty and perfection of God's creation. I found especially captivating the relationship between the Earth and the sun. I consider it a profound object lesson of how darkness and light exist. As we all know, within every 24 hours, night turns to day and day turns to night. So then, what is night? Night is nothing more than a shadow. Even in the darkest of nights, the sun does not cease to radiate its light. It continues to shine as bright as ever, but the half of the earth is in darkness. The absence of light causes darkness. When the darkness of night falls, we do not despair and worry that the sun is extinguished. We do not postulate that the sun is not there or is dead. We understand that we are in a shadow, that the earth will continue to rotate, and that eventually the rays of the sun will reach us once again. Darkness is not an indication that there is no light. Most often, it simply means we're not in the right place to receive the light. So that's kind of interesting, right? When we're thinking about the eclipse in the church being established. Okay, it was established during a time of light. During the recent solar eclipse, many made great efforts to get in the narrow band of shadow created by the moon in the middle of a bright sunny day. In a very similar way, spiritual light continually shines upon all of God's creation. Satan will make every effort to create a shadow or get us into a shadow of our own making. He will coerce us to create our own eclipse. He will push us into the darkness of his cavern. Spiritual darkness can draw a veil of forgetfulness around even those who once walked in the light and rejoiced in the Lord. Nevertheless, even in moments of greatest darkness, God hears our humble petitions as we pray, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. In the days of Alma, there were many who struggled to accept spiritual things, and, quote, because of their unbelief, end quote, God's light and truth did not enter their souls, end quote, and their hearts were hardened. Okay, and then we have Elder Gary E. Stevenson, and the title of his talk is Spiritual Eclipse. And let me read what he says. On August 21st of this year, two rare events occurred that captured the attention of people around the world. The first was the 90th birthday celebration of our beloved prophet, President Thomas S. Monson. Uh, at the time, I was on assignment in the Pacific area and was thrilled that the saints of Australia, Vanuatu, I don't know how to pronounce that, Vanuatu, New Zealand, and French Polynesia were not only aware of his personal milestone, but they also rejoiced in celebrating it. It felt fortunate to share in their warm expressions of faith and love for this great man. What an inspiration it is to see the connection Latter-day Saints share with their prophet. Of course, President Monson, mindful of those desiring to wish him a happy birthday, described an ideal birthday gift. Quote, find someone who is having a hard time or is ill or lonely and do something for them. That's all I would ask. We love and sustain you, President Monson. Solar eclipse. The other rare and heavenly event occurring on the same day, you guys, and captivating millions worldwide, was a total solar eclipse. This was the first such time an eclipse had marched across the entire United States in 99 years. Look at those numbers. 90, 99. I don't have an interpretation for that. Feel free to share that below or send me an email. But wait a minute. August 17th. I feel like maybe that's something I knew before. I'm not sure. Look at this. What gift does President Monson want for his birthday? Deseret News, August 17th. Let's look that up. Okay, no, let's look at President Monson. Let's see. He was born on the 21st, it says. He was born on the 21st, so not on the 17th, but it just so happens that that article from the Deseret News was on the 17th. That's interesting. Hold on. So wait, when was the 2017 solar eclipse? So it was on the 21st. So yeah, same day as his birthday. So, 21, that's made up of 3 sevens. That's interesting. And then August is the 8th month. So I don't know. But it's interesting because what we know is that he passed away. That was his last birthday. He died at the age of 90. He passed away at the very beginning of 2018. So going from one prophet to another, right? Um, an eclipse on his birthday. I feel like there's too much order to all this, that everything is intentional, that there's not really coincidences, especially when it comes to important things like this: prophets, prophecy, um, nations, the world, the church. That's just how I view things. But so it's interesting. Here we have two examples in Elder Stevenson's talk, and then in President Woodruff's talk, where they seem to indicate that eclipses are important and that they are signs and have to do with the church and with the prophet. Um, so that's why I don't think that we can ignore this upcoming eclipse, the one that's going to be tonight. I'm going to post this at 7 a.m. Central Time on the 8th. Okay. I think that we would do well to think about this. Think about the fact that it's happening the first time that this is ever happening on an election day, and maybe, just maybe, what the implications are, especially at a time when President Nelson is asking us to be the people of the second coming, at a time when he's doing interesting things with numbers: 17 one conference, 18 the next conference. You know, I could be misreading all this. I don't know. But now here's the thing. Here's the thing. In the case of Wilford Woodruff, okay, in the case of Wilford Woodruff, well, first, let me just show you this. I looked up, this is on a UK website, a UK government website. They have what that eclipse looked like in 1831. And let me see if I can let me just pull it up in a new tab so we can look at it closer, hopefully. Maybe not. Maybe it's not going to pull up. Yeah, there we go. So, I don't know what I make out of this shape. You tell me what you see. Okay. The church would have been established up here, but so it was established in New York State, but that was the year before. So at the time of this eclipse, which was February so almost a year later, because the church was established on April 6th, 1830. Almost a year later, you have this eclipse. What did it say? What did it say in? Give me a second. Here we go. Zion, New Jerusalem. Oh, I guess I'd have to look it up in the scriptures. Oh no, right here. So July 20th of 1831, section 57. That's when. Okay, so around July 20th. Or maybe even on that day. That's the day that Zion was, or New Jerusalem was identified. So that would be roughly about right here, because you see Minnesota. Minnesota is easy to identify because of the Great Lakes. You have Minnesota, Iowa, and then Missouri. And so Kansas City, the Independence, Jackson County area, is going to be somewhere about right here, which is a pretty good central point of this path of totality. You know what I mean? If you were to like cut this in half, like right about here, and then if you made a line that's like as perpendicular as possible to the path of totality, it seems like it would kind of go through um, Jackson County, roughly. So I don't know, but even if you don't look at it that closely, the general idea is here you have New Jerusalem that just got identified, and then the church was established the year before. So I don't know. The way that President Woodruff looks at it is that this is associated with the church being established, but it also may have to do with the timing of New Jerusalem being identified. I don't know. I don't know. But so you have this, okay? Let's go with what Wilford Woodruff said. Eclipse, nothing really seemed to happen in that year, but the year before, 1830, the church was established. Okay, so good thing happens first, and then the sign. So this is like a reverse sign. It's not really. It's like a retroactive sign pointing backwards. The way that he looks at it. So if that's the case, think about this. Let's go to, um, let's see, which one was it that I needed to look at? Right here. No. Sorry, guys. Give me just 1 second. I'll get it. I swear, when I had this all planned out, it was planned out. But now that I'm actually doing the video, it's all messed up. I just need to find the 2017 eclipse. Okay, no, I just need to, all I need to do is mention it. That's all I got to do. Okay, we had the eclipse in 2017. So if that eclipse is following the Wilford Woodruff pattern, if that's the way that the Lord works with solar eclipses, total solar eclipses, you had the one in 2017. So did something interesting happen the year before in 2016? Well, you had the 2016 Wendy Nelson Worldwide Devotional. That's not what it was called. That's just how I'm searching it. It was a worldwide it was a worldwide devotional for young adults. This was at the beginning of the year, January 10th, 2016, BYU, Hawaii. During Sister Nelson's talk called Becoming the Person You Were Born to Be, at the very end of the talk, we've gone over this a million times on the channel. This is a very famous quote. She ends the talk with this. So now, a question as I conclude. What if you learned that the Savior had already returned to this earth, that he, as part of his second coming, had already met with some of his true followers in several marvelous large gatherings about which the world, including CNN and the blogosphere, knew nothing? If you found out that Savior was already on the earth, what would you desperately want to do today? And what would you be willing and ready to do tomorrow? So she said this a year before the 2017 eclipse. Is it because she knew that maybe the first of these several marvelous large gatherings, the first would be that year? What if there's like one a year? What if there's one a year? Or what if there's like one every other year? Or what if Adam doesn't play out the way that we picture it? I know that there's some people that think that it's going to go a certain way, or that we know that it hasn't happened yet because da 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 da. Which I'm not so sure. It seems like it's an event that is part of a series. I've put forth the idea. I'm not necessarily saying that this is right, but I've put forth the idea that these area devotionals that are going on, okay, where President Nelson himself is talking to, there was the Kansas, Oklahoma area devotional, there was the California, there was the Europe, there was the most recent one, the British Columbia and Alberta area devotional. And then I have it on good authority from someone that lives there that there's going to be one in Las Vegas, or it's going to be for Nevada, or I don't know, but she's going to let me know whenever she finds out for sure. So what if these are part of that, or what if they're like a precursor to it? I don't know, but if what she's referring to right here, if this already, maybe this along with what we know about eclipses and what Wilford Woodruff said, maybe this kind of started in 2016. Just something to think about. I'm not saying that it did. Just something to think about. Another thing to think about is, okay, so we have, okay, that's the partial. Okay, next year, about a year from now, we are going to have an annular solar eclipse. So this is similar to the total. It's the one that I was talking about before where I better just make sure. I better just make sure. What is an annular solar eclipse? An annular solar eclipse happens when the moon covers the sun's center, leaving the sun's visible outer edges to form a ring of fire. Okay, yeah, I was right. So look at that picture right there. Okay, so we're going to have one of those. That's going to go over Utah next year. Next year, this is going to go over Utah. And this is the same type of eclipse, a solar eclipse that Wilford Woodruff said seemed to have been associated, the one in 1831 associated with the establishment of the church in in 1830. So it would just be interesting if this year. Oh wait, no, sorry, this is the 2023. Well, this is still significant because this one, if it points to this year, 2022, it very well could be pointing to the fact that we were called upon to be the people of the second coming. Okay. That could be, especially the fact that it's going over Utah. But the one that I was actually thinking about, 2024. 2024 seems to be the end of the two eclipse pair of 2017 and 2024. Okay. This is the one that's going over all these church sites right here, including notably Kirtland, Ohio. Okay. Now, if we're having this one, now this one is a total solar eclipse. If we're having this one in 2024, could that mean that something big will happen in 2023? If the 2023 eclipse points to us being called as the people of the second coming, does the 2024 eclipse mean the second coming in 2023 sometime? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, but maybe something big will happen next year, especially in light of what's happening with Russia. It's a very not good situation, something that, frankly, no one knows how it's going to end, but the implications are pretty daunting. And as we're approaching these elections that are tied to a lunar eclipse, I get the sense when I talk to a lot of you privately that you feel like it's closer than than maybe what you'll say in the comments, because no one wants to look silly and be like, "Oh, I think it's going to happen next year." But so some might be a little bit reluctant to say that they think that. And I think there's many of you that kind of believe like me that when it comes to things that have to happen before the second coming, that I don't think that some of them we're going to even realize or know. Like, it may seem like when you read the scriptures that it's just going to be so obvious, but I think that things can happen in such a different way sometimes, and that other things can happen quicker than what we think. The only thing really, in my mind, that really stands in the way of this happening next year would potentially be the rainbow prophecy by Joseph Smith, where he says that in the year that you see a rainbow, I better just find it. I can't even remember if he says rainbow or he says like the bow in the clouds. So we're going to be looking in the scriptural teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith. First, I'll look for rainbow. Nope. Here we go. Bow. Just give me a second. I think it's this right here. The inhabitants of the earth are asleep. They know not the day of their visitation. The Lord hath set the bow in the cloud for a sign, that while it shall be seen, seed time and harvest, summer and winter shall not fail. But when it shall disappear, woe to that generation, for the behold, the end cometh quickly. But I think he says, like, in the year. Let me do a search for year. So this is on page 305. Oh, here's 340. Page 340, he says, I have asked the Lord concerning his coming. And while asking the Lord, he gave a sign and said, quote, in the days of Noah, I set a bow in the heavens as a sign and token that in any year that the bow should be seen, the Lord should not come, but there should be seed time and harvest during that year. But whenever you see the bow withdrawn, it shall be a token that there shall be famine, pestilence, and great distress among the nations, and that the coming of the Messiah is not far distant. So this one is kind of like, there's a lot to think about with this, because for one thing, we don't know if he's talking about the Hebrew year. Is it going from the first of Tishri to the next first of Tishri? Is it talking about the Gregorian calendar? I would assume so, since he's talking to Joseph Smith, and there are things that seem to be observed in the church on the Gregorian calendar rather than the Hebrew calendar. You know, the way that it seems that the way it reads, it seems as though if a rainbow is not seen the entire year, see, it says as a sign and token that in any year that the bow should be seen, the Lord would not come. So, if you saw one, I guess, on January 1st, then you would know that for that entire year, he's not going to come. Now, what I don't know is he talking about all of humanity? Is he talking just about the prophet? I don't know, because it's conceivable. It seems a whole lot more likely that if the prophet doesn't see a rainbow, then that would be a sign for him, right? I wish there was like further elaboration on this. I don't know. People have put forth the possibility, well, maybe in that year there's going to be nuclear war, we're going to have nuclear winter, and the sun will be blocked out. I don't know about that. I feel like when there's things that are that huge, if like the entire atmosphere was blocked, then pretty much the entire world would know that the end is coming soon. And when we read the scriptures, it seems like it's going to take people by surprise. That it comes in a time that you think not. People are going to be marrying and giving in marriage. So another possibility is that he comes on January 1st before anyone anywhere in the world has time to see a rainbow, which I suppose that's a possibility. I don't know. So, put your thoughts in the comments below. I'm not saying take this with a grain of salt, but maybe that we don't exactly know if this is just like straightforward or if it's applying just to the prophet, who is the one that would officially receive revelation for the church. I don't know. I don't know. Um, okay, so there's that. The other thing that I wanted to point out, I don't think there's much more to go over, but one thing I did want to point out is that we've kept track of the Shemitah years. If you don't know what that is, on the Hebrew calendar, every 7 years is a sabbatical year. So they treat years kind of like weeks. And on the 7th year, it's the Sabbath, the sabbatical year, also called the Shemitah. We were in a Shemitah. Oh, and by the way, Easter this year was on the 17th. Okay, so around the time of the April General Conference, Easter fell, or first fruits, both first fruits and Easter, which are essentially the same thing, they both fell on the 17th. Okay. Okay. So this sabbatical year ended in September. Well, wait, was it September or was it October? Oh, I gotta do this too. Shoot. Okay, let me pull up my Hebrew calendar. There's this really cool website. I'll put it in the description below, where you can see the conversion between the Hebrew calendar and the Gregorian calendar. Okay, so this year, Rosh Hashanah, which is when the the date changes, it was on. Yeah, that's right. It was on September 26th. Okay, and by the way, there's so much. The Queen of England, or the Queen of Britain, she died on the 8th. Okay, a new beginning. She died on the 8th of September. And the next day, on the 9th, that's when President Nelson became the oldest prophet or apostle of this dispensation. So just another 8, another new beginning. But anyway, Rosh Hashanah, the sabbatical year ended before sundown, or at sundown, on the 25th of September. So now we are in a new beginning, right? The Shemitah, it's the 7th year. It's the 7th year. And that week, okay, Rosh Hashanah was on Monday and Tuesday. And then on Sunday, or Saturday and Sunday, that was General Conference. And that's where President Nelson was using all the 18s. And this time, instead of 17 to complete 100, 18 to complete 300. I don't know how it works out, but it does. So that's another reason to maybe look at this year, both this Hebrew year between this September and next September, or maybe October, I'm not sure, and the year 2023, because of the big eclipse in 2024. And if it follows the Wilford Woodruff pattern, that would mean something big in 2023, possibly the second coming itself. And then with the Shemitah cycle, maybe that first year after the sabbatical year would be the best time for Christ to come, because it would represent a new beginning. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So much. And then look at this. In 2024, okay, you know what day the eclipse happens? Well, first we have General Conference on April 6th and April 7th, and then the eclipse happens on the 8th, the next day. A new beginning. A new beginning the next day. It's unbelievable. These are the reasons why okay, I'm just going to say it. I think that it could be happening sooner than later. In the past, I've said like maybe 5 to 10 years. And I think it's because I've feared, just being too anxious about it. And I think a lot of you have felt that same way too. I'm not going to have my heart crushed. Well, I kind of will, but but if it doesn't happen, I'm not going to lose faith. But it's just something exciting to think about. If it doesn't happen, just truck forward. It's fine. But if it does happen, then we're in for good times. We are in for good times, and it is exciting and something to be happy about. All right, let me let me just double check all my million tabs. Um, I wanted to show like some stuff with like these lunar eclipses and their connection to the Afghanistan war, because you had this lunar eclipse January of 2001. So this is before 9/11, and this is pretty centered, not maybe all the way, but it's pretty close to centered over Afghanistan. Later that year, the Afghanistan war would start in October. And then I'll just exit out of this, right? Am I just going to exit out of it? Yes, I am. And then in 2004, you have this eclipse that is somewhat centered over both Afghanistan and Iraq. And the Iraq war started the year before. So that's interesting. Wilford Woodruff, okay, that American Civil War. I can't remember why I was gonna. There was like some other things I was gonna read, but this video's just gone too long. Yeah, this has just gone too long. Okay, so that's gonna be it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. If you have any additional information, that'd be great. Either comment or send it by email. I can't guarantee I'll get to your email because I get billions of emails, but I try and do my best to find the most pertinent emails or ones that are time sensitive. So, but just have patience with me and don't take it personally if I don't get your email. Yeah, but that's it. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share this with anyone that you feel would benefit from this or be receptive to this. And I'll talk to you guys later.